Welcome back. So what do you make of this week, folks? The good news for President Trump, his approval ratings are ticking up. That's good. To a Real Clear Politics average of 41.7. That's bad. A new CNN poll says 54% of Americans believe Trump will lose his re-election bid in 2020. That's bad. On the other hand, that's the exact same number of people who said President Obama would lose his re-election bid at the same point in his presidency, and we all know what happened there. Joining us for more are State Representative Joe Gruters, who co-chaired the president's campaign in Florida, Barry Edwards, a Democratic political consultant, and Zach Anderson, the political editor of the Herald Tribune. Let's start, folks, with what happened this week with the VA secretary who is out. He was a holdover from the Obama administration. And Joe, I don't quite get in terms of why the president removed him. Was it over the privatization issue or over some of the stories about the secretary's travel abroad?
Listen, we hired the president to make decisions. Sometimes they're tough decisions, and I think, listen, he campaigned hard for the veterans, and I think he wants to do everything he can, and he said it in that speech on Thursday where he said he didn't think things were moving fast enough. He wants the veterans to get the care that they deserve, the care that they need, and you're fired. I mean, his Apprentice show will tell you that.
Listen, what, though?
I don't think he said it. It's not, things are not moving fast enough. He wants the veterans to get the best care in the country, regardless if it's at the VA hospital, if they want the decision to go to their own private doctor. They should be able to make those decisions. And at the end of the day, Donald Trump makes things happen, and he wants people to move. And listen, if you're on his team and you don't agree with him, and you are not moving at the pace that he wants you to move, he's going to replace you with somebody who will do it. And I think that the president is what he's doing. He's doing exactly what he said he would do in the campaign, and that's do everything he can for the veterans of this great country.
Barry, is it clear that veterans want the VA to be privatized?
Veterans don't want the VA to be privatized. They like the facilities that they have. We have the C.W. Bill Young facility in Pinellas County, and that was named after Bill Young, who, like the congressman above him, Mike Miller-Rackus, they totally championed. They would go to the VA hospitals. Donald Trump does one thing well. He talks a lot. But he didn't give a reason why he fired. He probably didn't even fire him in person. He didn't even fire his national security advisor in person. He did it by telephone when they're only 100 feet away. But I don't care about the past. I want to care about what's moving forward. He hired somebody that he liked, that was not competent for the job, that nobody on the right or the left thinks has the credentials to run an organization with 345,000 employees, the second largest department in the government.
Zach,
that's the problem.
This is a sensitive issue around here because we have so many veterans living on the Suncoast and in the greater Tampa Bay area. Is this an issue that is important to them that they vote on, and what do they make of basically the White House doctor taking over such a huge bureaucracy?
You're right. There are a lot of veterans around here, and it's a very important issue to veterans. And I think it's one that the White House is probably going to tread carefully with because, you know, even though the VA has gotten a lot of criticism over the years about wait lists and the quality of care and their efforts to improve the system there, it still is an issue. It's an institution that veterans care a lot about. They want to get their care, in a affordable manner. And if you start talking about privatization, that can turn some people off. You know, you saw what happened when George W. Bush was talking about privatizing Social Security. There was a big backlash to that. So I bet that this is an issue that they're going to wade into with some sensitivity here going forward.
Barry, as I said at the outset, the president's approval ratings are ticking up to about 41%. That's pretty low compared to other presidents at this point in their. But there's been so much negative coverage from the Stormy Daniels situation, from the continuing Russia investigation to the chaos in terms of who's coming and going from the White House. Why do you think the numbers are up?
Well, let's put this in perspective. They're up 1 or 2 points, but there's been a range of 41 to 40 or 40 to 43%, I think, for his approval, and on the disapproval from 53 to 56. So it either goes up or down within the 3-point range. This is all margin of error stuff. So he's really not that, they're not really ticking up that much.
Joe, are you somewhat surprised, given everything that's been in the headlines over the last couple of weeks and months, that I know you support the president, but you know some of the stuff has been basically, you know, kind of, we're not talking about the president's agenda, we're talking about porn stars and playmates and Russia.
And it's funny that the Ds are relying on these porn stars and these sideshows to be their main spokespeople now. The problem is if we relied on polls, Donald Trump would not have won the election. I think at the end of the day, Americans will understand. Look at what Trump has already accomplished in a short period of time. All these regulations gone. The economy is booming. It's humming. Listen, North Korea just recently said that they're going to come and talk. Listen, Donald Trump is doing so many different things on so many different levels for America. And I think at the end of the day, by the time he gets up for re-election, I think Americans will overwhelmingly put him back in, because he has had so much success. Unfortunately, some of these other issues, yes, people don't like it. Listen, my wife doesn't like to see this stuff on TV all the time, but it's that consistent hammering by the left-wing media out there. I think 98% of all news is against Donald Trump,
right.
And it's a concerted effort to take him out.
Obviously, we're just getting warmed up, and we'll have much more on the Week in Washington right after we check the First Alert weather. Stay with us. Welcome back. We are talking about the week in Washington, and joining us for more, our State Representative Joe Gruters, who co-chaired the president's campaign in Florida, Barry Edwards, a Democratic political consultant, and Zach Anderson, political editor of the Herald Tribune. Joe, the president mostly stayed out of sight this week, but he did go out yesterday and he did give this speech, and he said something curious, and he also tweeted something curious, and that was he showed pictures of the border wall going up. He also spoke about it. Let's take a look.
We started building our wall. I'm so proud of it. We started. We have 1.6 billion. And we've already started. You saw the pictures yesterday. I said, what a thing of beauty.
Fact check. The pictures that the president that showed on Twitter was not the border wall going up. It was a construction project that has been in the works for years. It's one thing to support a border wall, but why would you put up photographs and say something to a national audience that simply is not true?
Well, his border wall is going up. That may not have been the exact picture.
Construction has not started.
They did the prototypes. I think they picked the first couple. It is getting started. It is underway.
Why not say so?
And we need to do everything we can to make sure our borders are safe. Listen, all these illegal drugs, all these kids that are dying from drugs, illegal drug use, it's flowing through the border in illegal ways, and we have to protect our country.
So why not say so, but not say that these are pictures of our border wall going up when it is not?
And I think it may have been it may have been an error. I think what happens is, listen, the president obviously isn't on the border looking. I think people are doing a lot of these things. Yeah, and exactly. And he looked at actual prototypes that were going up. I think what he's doing is, I think he relied on staff. Somebody sent him a picture, and as a result, he sent the wrong picture. But listen, he did look at the prototypes. They did pick some. This whole thing is underway. The wall will be built, and it's going to be paid for by Mexico.
Okay.
Barry?
Shame, shame, shame. My mother told me that a half lie, a half truth is a full lie. And everything you just said about Donald Trump is a full lie.
No, it's...
Number one, he doesn't rely on staff because he keeps firing his staff. Number two, he knew exactly what he was talking about. Mexico has said they're not going to pay. And our own people in the State Department under Rex Tillerson said they're not going to pay.
Tillerson's gone.
Okay, well...
They're going to pay.
Okay, Mexico's not going to pay. There's nobody that thinks that in D.C. Nobody
One way or the other, they will pay.
And if we're so concerned about all the drugs coming in, how come the Florida legislature, which you sit in, the Republican Party, took the $27 million and passed it and the $25 million before, when every single day since Parkland, every single day in Florida, 16 people in the state of Florida have died of opioid.
And you know what we've done?
How come we haven't done anything about that?
Let's stay on topic for one second. And
yeah,
Zach,
okay.
let me ask you this. When the president says something like that and tweets something like that, does that resonate with anyone here on the Suncoast?
Well, I think the border wall is important to a lot of his base, and after the Stormy Daniels and all the talk about that, he's probably trying to change the subject a little bit, remind his base of that he's trying to deliver on some of his promises. There was this spending bill that went through recently, $1.3 trillion, and he was stung a little bit in it because he didn't get as much as he wanted for the border wall, and he did get some money for it, but it wasn't nearly enough to build the entire wall. And so he's probably trying to save face a little bit here and talk about how we're getting started with this even if we can't do the whole thing.
Barry, a new poll came out this week, and I know that you don't like talking about polls, but on the other hand, on the generic ballot, the lead that the Democrats have in terms of who voters want to control Congress the Democrats still lead, but it is down significantly.
The average is down to 6.7.
How do you explain that?
Well, you do have a little fluidity, and for whatever reason, after the Stormy Daniels story on 60 Minutes, his numbers went up and his disapproval went down. I don't know why. Maybe Republican voters like base behavior. I don't think they do, but I think that's all kind of within a margin. But the one thing going for Trump is that he inherited a great economy from President Obama, and the kinks have been worked out. There's surge in reemployment. People that have been out of the workforce for years are coming back in. So he's getting the credit for that, which is interesting, where he never gave any credit to Barack Obama after 8 years, but he takes all the credit immediately.
Joe, quick question, then I want to turn to subjects. But number one, do you believe that the Republicans are in danger of losing control of the Congress? And number two, if that happened, could that actually benefit for the president? Because after all, it would give him an enemy out there that he could rail against and campaign against.
No, because unfortunately in D.C., if we were to lose the House, we really lose our opportunity to govern. And it's it's hard enough now when we don't have 60 senators, but if we were to lose the House too, it's going to make it almost impossible for the president to get his agenda moved forward. So I think we are in danger of losing it, but what I'm hopeful is that people will see. I think Obama helped a little bit with the economy, but I think it's Donald Trump's policies, the fact that he's cut so many regulations, where the African American and minority employment is at record highs. And listen, the economy is booming, I think, because you have somebody that's interested in helping the overall economy. People want people to be employed and be good providers for their children. And I think Donald Trump is doing an amazing job.
Another poll came out this week showing that most Americans say that the tax cut they got in December has not really done much to improve the conditions of their wallets.
Okay, so we're talking about tax cuts right now. Listen, I'm a CPA. I'm doing taxes all day, every day. And so basically, a lot of tax cuts are through the W-2. So they're saying, some people are saying 30, 50, 100 bucks per pay period in their wallets. It may not be a lot to some, but listen, it's a dinner, it's something else they could do. But a lot of people, I will tell you that I've seen it go from anywhere from a $100 difference to a $10,000 difference. And for people that struggle and that live paycheck to paycheck, every dollar counts, and you can't discount it. And the people that do discount it, obviously, if they don't need the money, they could certainly continue to give it through other means.
And based on things like the fundamentals of the economy, which is booming. I mean, we're getting close to 3% growth, which is pretty high. Tax cuts, people like that. They were able to get those through Congress. You would think that the GOP would be doing better on these generic ballot tests and others. And what that says is that people are not necessarily looking at things like the fundamentals of the economy. They're looking more at the president's personality. He is obviously very polarizing, and he has continued to be polarizing throughout his presidency, and that is really what's driving a lot of the political narrative right now.
And it's because the press and the national news cycles continue to focus on the garbage rather than focusing on what's important to people.
I always want to ask this question. Is it the fact that the networks and the newspapers are focusing on negative things about the president, or is the president doing things that are inexplicable, sometimes not truthful, and sometimes you look at the comings and goings from the White House and people are wondering, is there chaos in the White House?
If that was the case, then you would have had a lot more about Bill Clinton, and it shows you, like the New York Times said, that attack somebody based on this stuff is inexcusable. But then
the turnover in the White House under Bill Clinton was not as rapid as it was here.
We're talking about the negative image by the news media on a presidential person. 96% of the stuff that comes out is negative.
News week. We're talking about a slow news week, and he fired his VA secretary, which is a hugely important position.
Because he wasn't doing his job.
In the administration, we're dealing with the backlash of the Stormy Daniels interview. It was, it was the Wall Street Journal that dug up this payment to Stormy Daniels from Trump's lawyer. So it's not like the Wall Street Journal is some liberal entity. I mean, these issues are legitimate issues, and they continue to come up in this presidential administration.
And if Trump was a good manager, and first of all, I like to see all these regulations that you say have been rolled off. Most of them haven't been rolled off, but if you look at like the Department of Treasury, there's 41, 43 deputy secretaries, he's filled like a third of them. You can't govern a bureaucracy of 3-4 million people without managers.
And a lot of that
it shows you that he doesn't know how to manage.
I want to turn to a state issue. Marco Rubio saying this week, after it was announced that Governor Rick Scott is going to be announcing his candidacy for U.S. Senate against Democrat Bill Nelson. Marco Rubio saying he will not campaign against Bill Nelson. as a Republican, state representative, what's your reaction to that, Joe?
Huge mistake. I think people like Senator Rubio. I think I understand from serving in a body, you know, it's hard to attack somebody you serve with on a daily basis, that you work with on united things where you're trying to do good for our state. But at the end of the day, Rick Scott is probably one of the best governors Florida ever had, and I think the opportunity to put a man like him in the United States Senate, I think he could have a tremendous impact. And I think Marco Rubio needs to do everything he possibly can to help our great governor take that seat.
Again, Zach, does that mean anything to people around here?
I'm not sure. There might be some Republicans who are a little bit annoyed at Rubio over that, but the reality is that Rubio and Nelson have to maintain a good relationship. Their job is to represent the state of Florida together, and they need to work as a team to do that. And if you're campaigning against somebody and attacking somebody, you're not necessarily doing the people's work for the state of Florida.
We know that Republicans, 91% of Republicans, even in Alabama, that turned out to vote, voted for Roy Moore. So we know Republicans vote for Republicans and Democrats vote for Democrats. So Republicans that come out in this election in November are going to vote for Rick Scott. The Democrats are going to vote for Bill Nelson. And it's all going to come down to the enthusiasm of Democrats, whether they turn out or not.
All right, we have to take a quick break, and we'll be back for final thoughts in 1 moment. And our guests join us right now for final thoughts. And I want to stay on another local issue, and also, on the other hand, it's an issue involving Marco Rubio coming out and endorsing Julio Gonzalez, the state representative in the race for the 17th Congressional District to replace Tom Rooney. The U.S. Senator Marco Rubio getting involved in the Republican primary, endorsing Gonzalez over Greg Steube. Were you surprised by that, Joe?
I actually think it will make a difference, but I think it will make a difference for Greg Steube. I think the base is not overly excited for Marco Rubio right now, especially with what he said about the governor and not helping him. And talk about having to play. Senator Rubio will have to play with the next congressman, just like he plays with the senator, for him to stay out of the race against Nelson, but for him to get involved in this congressional race. I think it's a big mistake. I think it will. I think both candidates could use it equally to their advantage. But at the end of the day, I think it's a wash. No matter what.
Zach, two questions. Number one, do you agree with that? And number two, how unusual was this?
It is unusual for, high-level, lawmakers in one party or the other to get too involved in primaries, but not unusual in this case because Rubio and Gonzalez, they're both of Cuban descent. They have a relationship that goes back for years. Rubio actually endorsed Gonzalez in his state House race in 2014 and cut television ads for him that very much probably helped him win his primary. What it says is this is going to be a blockbuster race. Greg Steube got into this race and he rolled out a long list of endorsements, a lot of the leading GOP figures in the region. I think he was trying to scare off opponents. Gonzalez got in anyway, and he's got this big endorsement in his back pocket now, and if Rubio actually campaigns for him and does some advertising, it could really help him a lot.
Barry, let me ask you this. With the 17th Congressional District, it has been in Republican hands for, I don't know when the last time a Democrat was in there, in this congressional district, but in this year, when we keep on hearing blue tidal wave, blue tsunami, why isn't there a high-profile Democrat in this race in particular?
Because there's ranges. Everything comes down to each district, and this district is beyond the tsunami. So you could have, they've got like a 100-foot seawall, and even if the tsunami gets up to 90 foot, it's going to fall short. So the Democrats have a finite amount of resources, and so they have to pick and choose. They can try to go after seats like Corbello, I think, down in Miami.
And Vern Buchanan.
Right. Well, Vern Buchanan's seat's probably not into play either, I don't think.
Well, the Democrats don't seem to think so.
Well, but the Democrats say that every year and they lose by 10 or more points, so okay. I think that's...
All right, we have to leave it there, gentlemen. Thank you very much. But before we go, we want to share with you what some of you said about last night's show about the human remains found off of Manasota Key. Researchers are investigating a 7,000-year-old Native American burial ground off of Manasota Key. It's a quarter of a mile off the coast, and human remains have been found there. We went to Facebook to hear what some of you had to say. And Nikki says, bothersome, digging through graves. Rest in peace. But Barbara says it's incredible listening to the archaeologist describing it tonight. It's amazing that it survived over 7,000 years and the remains were still well preserved. Fascinating story. Well, if you'd like to join the conversation on tonight's topic, just visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/mysuncoast.com.abc7. And FYI, you can watch past discussions on demand. They're available on Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and Roku. And for the latest on local breaking news, don't forget to download the updated version of our app. If your current app doesn't work, it's expired, just go to the App Store and re-download it by searching for WWSB or My Suncoast. We want to thank all our guests for being here tonight. State Representative Joe Gruters, who co-chaired the president's campaign in Florida, Barry Edwards, a Democratic political consultant, and Zach Anderson, political editor of the Herald Tribune.